Good day out there to all of my listeners, and I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way. And for my new listeners out there, I'm your host, and my name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And for many of you, yes, I will repeat this again. That is the name of my book, Is Your Way in Your Way. And as I say that, I want you to think about it. Are you in your way? And if so, why? I mean, what is it that you want to do? What's going on with you? Have you ever felt like something inside of you have shifted? Like that you can't explain it, or you in a posture that says, I know there is more for me in this life, but you just can't figure it out. Well, look, I've been there, so I'm just curious to know whether you guys have been there as well. Now, one of the things we talk about, topics that are related to what I call self-improvement, personal improvement, also self-reflection. And as we go through these topics and my special guest, I want you to kind of look in the mirror. It's not about me. It's about you. So we're going to actually talk about some things that enable you to kind of look to see if that's where you are. So our topic today is Awaken Your Potential. And I'd like to introduce to you today, Brheanna Myers. Hi, Brheanna.
Hi, how are you?
I am
Thank you for
doing.
having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Listen, listeners, my guest today, she just doesn't talk about transformation. We all hear about that word transformation. She's actually lived it. Trust me, she has lived it. So I am so looking forward to hearing and talking about how she's lived it, how perhaps she's been in her way, and what were some of the things that she did to get out of her way. I like to just read a little bit about Brheanna. I could ask her to tell us about herself, but no, I want to read it so that you can understand what qualifies her to talk about what we're getting ready to talk about. She is the founder of Light Breezy Coaching and creator of the Awaken Your Potential Method. She's a transformational approach born from her own near-death experience that reshaped her life and her purpose as a certified QHHT quantum healer, hypnosis. I should have said method or technique, and she will clarify that. But I don't want to use acronyms because everybody doesn't know what they mean. So she's a practitioner, a quantum energy healer, and quantum healing hypnosis therapy. So obviously, it's a quantum healer hypnosis therapist. She's also a spiritual coach. She helps individuals release deep rooted energetic blocks, reconnect with their higher self, and move from survival mode to alignment. Through her powerful blend of practical psychology and advanced energetic healing, Brheanna makes a spiritual awakening accessible, grounded, and deeply transformative, guiding others to reclaim their clarity, their balance, and their highest potential. Wow, it's a lot packed in that, guys. So, hey, so get ready, sit down, take notes. If you're driving, just listen, and you can definitely replay this podcast over again. And Brheanna, my first question for you is I want to know about your childhood. And the reason I want to know because what I've read about you and my understanding is a lot happens with your childhood. You said one time, don't abandon your childhood abilities. You had a friend, and I'm curious that when you were a child, did you know what it is that you wanted to do? Did you have dreams and aspirations as a child? So let's hear what your childhood was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I'll say that I love that you brought up my friend. So that's a very important part of my childhood. I lived a very traumatic childhood. It was, drugs involved. There was abandonment. I was kind of moved between families and homes and didn't have any stability. So I did have what we would call an imaginary friend, and her name was Apple Pie. And when I was young, she was there with me from my first memories. But she was as real to me as anyone else. But I was kind of isolated from other people. People used to even say that they thought I was stupid or something wrong with me because I didn't speak to a lot of people. But
Okay.
I was very observant of systems. And so I remember I would watch anthills for hours. I would sit in trees and just watch how the wind would blow the leaves, or I'd
Mhm.
watch birds build nests. And so I was already very aware of systems that were in place. But I remember her always being there with me. So as my first major trauma, so, my childhood was very hectic, but my first major trauma happened on my 10th birthday. And that was when she left. And I don't remember it being, being very lonely then, but time goes on, we kind of forget about these things.
Mhm.
I'm gonna jump forward a little bit, but after
Okay.
my near-death experience, and we'll circle back to this, um, when I started channeling guides and spirits, I channeled my first three, or my three, and they're Paul, Argo, and Nima. And there was always this fourth energy kind of lingering in the background. And eventually, when I got very stable in what I was doing in my channel work, she finally stepped forward, and it was Apple Pie. And she had been an angel, a guardian angel that had been with me in the very beginning. And she told me she had never left me, but that she didn't come in right away when I started channeling my guides, because she needed me to truly believe that I was capable of doing this, and that she wasn't some childhood delusion that I had brought back into the system. And so why I bring that up with people is that our guides are always with us. We have to learn to communicate with them, and then also learn in our trusting our own intuition and voice. And that's how we cultivate stronger connections with the divine, whether they be your spirit guides, ancestors, angelic divine beings. But yeah, that was kind of where she came in, and she's still with me now. And so what's funny about that is, a lot of people think like spiritual awakenings are this one moment. They're not. We were born and we were given tools all along the way. And for me, when I was looking at systems as a child, I started heavily watching systems as a hobby. I was just studying religion, I was studying history, not from like my school aspect. I was diving into the, deep rabbit holes of different cultures, different understandings of energy. And as I was doing that, people used to tell me I was just this plethora of useless knowledge. And then
Mhm.
when I had my big awakening, I realized none of it was useless at all. It was
Mhm.
all building to this life that I could never have dreamed was coming down the line.
Well, that's interesting, Miss Apple Pie. I know there are a lot of people that have imaginary friends. I didn't have an imaginary friend. My What I would do in my childhood was play with doll babies,
Mhm.
and I would just talk to the babies all the time. They were my kids. I take them on trips. So, in other words, when people have those imaginary friends, so I'm hearing from you, it's not to be afraid or fearful or ashamed that you have these, and you shared, especially when Apple Pie returned. Did
Mhm.
you share with individuals that Apple Pie was your imaginary friend and that your friend was real? And did anybody try to, like you said, they kind of looked at you like, she's kind of weird. So as a result of that imaginary friend, were you somewhat kind of aware of what it is that you wanted to do moving forward in your life?
No, I was so in survival as a child. I had no time for dreaming or the future. I've been through like sexual assaults. I had been through physical abuse.
Mhm.
I had been through so much that for me it was just about surviving. Um, but with like the imaginary friend, everyone around me, she was so real to me that you couldn't really tell me she wasn't a part
Okay.
of like my truth and my reality.
Mhm.
Like even my older brother used to be like, oh, if you don't stop, I'm going to tie apple pie up to a tree. And I would like freak out. Right. Like it was that level. Um,
Right.
but
Okay.
why we have these imaginary friends and why they leave us at a certain point is because when we incarnate here, we have a soul contract. We have a goal that we're trying to fulfill. Now, we think about that as what is the purpose, right? A lot of people come to me and they want to know, what's my purpose? What's my path? You're on it. You're doing it because
Mhm.
you don't deviate far from the path. You have
Mhm.
um, a destined path, and then we have like little doors along the way that we can do little side quests, right? And so that's where
Okay.
your free will kind of comes in. But your path is laid out. You're gonna get back on it.
Okay.
So she was a guide that knew what my path was going to be, but
Mhm.
knew that I had to go through them. And so this was where we'll get into what I saw in my near death experience, because I had to go through everything I went through to get
Okay.
to where I am right now.
Okay.
um so
Yeah, I like, because you know we all go through stuff, and it's no way out of it. There are always going to be trials and tribulations, and we have an opportunity to be maybe bitter about it or better, but yet you have the perspective now to say, I had to go through what I've gone through. So
mhm.
that's good, because as individuals, my listeners are listening, they've also been through things. So this will help them say, you know what, there's a reason that I went through this, and now that's going to enable them to give what I call a divine perspective on
Mhm.
why they've gone through what they've gone through. But I want to know, before your near death experience, I think it was before COVID. Everybody knows about COVID. What was your life prior to COVID, before your
Yeah,
near death experience?
so I always tell people, I'm like a cat. I've lived 9 lives. Because I moved everywhere. So my scenarios in life were very different. And so, for example, my mother was not very um, well off. We were very, very poor, poverty. There was 5 kids. It was very, scraping by kind of situation. And then my father is very well to do, and so when I lived with my mother, it was this 5 kids and very, you know, not a lot of money and stuff. But my mom was also very connected to spiritual things.
Okay.
She battled with addictions, family was split up many times due to that. And then my father was very strict, very, not so much a lot of emotion in that home.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I would be the only child, or then he would have stepkids come in. So the dynamics that I grew up in were so polar opposite. And again, that's where I say, like, I got this perspective from multiple places. So it all had to happen that way, where some people would be like, that's so traumatic for a young child to not have stability, or, know if they're loved, or know if they're, safe, or all those things. Um, but again, like, what kind of goes to, all those things have to happen in that way, and that perception of how we perceive it. We can either look at it as a victim or victor,
Yeah.
when those things happen to us or happen through us, is what I like to tell my clients, because these are alchemizing you. You are transmuting energy, and a lot of us are transmuting ancestral karma right now that has
Mm-hmm.
come down the line. Because even if you look at your DNA is associated with your past family at a
Mm-hmm.
traumatic DNA level. So we can actually see that from the DNA of a grandparent in a grandchild, that trauma actually passes through the lineage. And so what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
now is we're transmuting that, and we are actually pulling
Okay.
all of that out of our line. So that's why you have so many people that have decided that they're going to break the cycle,
Okay.
and we're breaking that generational cycle of trauma or abuse, or even just inadequacy. Sometimes our
Right.
parents aren't monsters. Sometimes it's just that they just didn't know how to love us because they didn't get taught that, or their
Exactly.
grandparents did.
Exactly. So those were the things you did or started understanding more prior to your near death experience. Now, Now, when you had that near death experience, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, it sounded like after that, it changed the trajectory of your life
Mhm.
because of
Yep.
that near. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was, in my 20s, I struggled with addiction myself. I was, just trying to survive. I ended up going back to school, getting my degree in business.
Hmm.
Um, and then I ended up owning a farm where we did direct to consumer, like meat sales, but all high
Hmm.
end, like no antibiotics. Or we were a humanity farm, so we were
Hmm.
raising animals that, because even then, you can even look at that. I was aware of energy transference. So if you eat an animal that was raised in horrible conditions or slaughtered horribly, that energy actually transfers to you, and you carry that through your metabolical DNA. So I was already kind of in this path on my way, like with this understanding of that. And then my near death experience happened right in the heart of that. So I was building that
Okay.
business.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So how did what was the near death experience, and what happened after that, or what enabled you based on that change the trajectory of your life, the course of your life?
Yeah, so I ended up contracting fungal pneumonia from wearing masks during COVID.
Okay.
But because it was in the height of COVID, I
Yes.
went to the emergency room 3 separate times, and they just kept testing me for COVID. They didn't test me for anything else, no chest x-rays, or it was just, oh, you don't have COVID, here's antibiotics. I went back in, nope, you don't have COVID, here's steroids. I went in a third time, they're like, well, you got to let the steroids kick in. And it was later that night on the third visit that I collapsed in my home. In that near death experience, and I'll kind of keep it short, there is a whole thing in here, but the parts that are really important for your audience
Hmm.
is I was shown, like, where people might talk about like a life review. I was
Right.
shown the quantum field. It was like this, I was standing on this void, and it was like all these different images or videos of all of the things that had ever happened to me, whether it be
Hmm.
heartbreak, trauma, love,
Hmm.
loss, all of it was shown. And
Okay.
I could see all of that and how it was all interconnected. So I knew then that everything had to happen like with divine precision for
Uh,
me to end up, and I could see over there me in this hospital bed. So it all just, it's so divinely precise. And
hmm.
so I had this understanding that we are all connected to every point, everything that happens to us or through us
Hmm.
is connected. And then that went away, and then I was shown everyone, the collective. That's you, that's me, that's the guy down the street, everyone, and how we were all connected, and that everything that
Hmm.
had happened through me creates this ripple through time
Hmm.
and space to
Okay.
affect the collective. And we think about ourselves, a
Hmm.
lot of people are like, oh, what's my path, what's my purpose? And I really like to hit people with this, is that our ego or our 3D mind thinks that to have a path or purpose, it must be something huge or significant, or that we need to have XYZ, and we have this whole grocery list of accomplishments we're supposed to
Yeah.
hit. But the truth is, some of the strongest people in the field live very quiet, simple lives, and they're the kind of person that donates their time to charity. They're the people, because you create this ripple effect, but you don't get to see how that ripple affects that child down the line, and they remember that kindness that you gave them, and they go and they create this big ripple beyond that. So sometimes what we want to see is our life have this big meaning, but
Yeah.
sometimes the meaning is just
Yeah.
being the kindness that will create
Yes.
a huge event. So I
Yeah.
tell people, like, you don't know if one thing that you didn't create the ripple in time that cures cancer,
Right.
but we want to see it. We want to feel
Yeah.
that we are important, but everyone is important, and every single one of us are connected, and there's no separation. That is the illusion. Even you and me, we are the same. We're just in different frequencies right now, and we have come together to co-create this interaction within us so that
Hmm.
we spread the message, spread the ripple, and be able
Hmm.
to show people that they're not alone, that they are totally worthy of exactly who they are, is
Hmm.
the way they were supposed to be. We put
Okay.
pressure on ourselves to be great. But sometimes being great is just being.
Right, right. So during that near death experience, it sounds to me that you had an awakening, something like, oh my gosh, and that's the title of our podcast today is Awaken Your Potential. So let's talk about what what does it mean to go through that awakening or that spiritual awakening? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I always kind of like to tell people this. I'm like, awakening is not becoming someone new. It's
Okay.
realizing that you created this character through
Mhm.
survival and through what other people told you to believe. So often our childhood, maybe religion or education, or we self-sacrifice so much without being aware of how much we've done it to create what we think someone's going to love, or the person that we should be, or especially us women, we tend to mold to the men that we're with because we feel like they're going to love us more, or maybe they'll love us right.
Mhm.
I've been through some horrible relationships. I remember, like, maybe if I just do this, he'll be more
Yeah,
appreciative of me.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
all of that stacks through your entire life, and society, I like to call them, society programs us to believe that we are these, we're just a number. I'm not significant. I'm not important. I'm just me. Right. And
Yeah,
all of that gets programmed into your subconscious mind, and you project that into this person that
yeah.
you are pretending to be. And it's not that people are actively even aware that they're pretending. Most people are like, I'm so authentic. This is who I am.
Right.
Awakening basically shoves you into the realization that you have been acting out a character that society told you had to be. And that's the
Mm.
true part of the awakening. So it's not like, going to a mountaintop and doing yoga and realizing, like, oh, I'm enlightened. It's the destruction of the past version of you and the creation of the truth of who you really are. So I don't know if many of your viewers know of Shiva. Shiva is the god of destruction and creation. And
Mm.
when you think about that, they are the same entity. You cannot create off of, or unless you destruct. So your life will
Mhm.
start to break apart, and you will start
Mhm.
to lose your job, lose your relationship. I know for me, my marriage fell apart. I sold my farm. I realized, I'm like, first it's a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Uh, I was really grief stricken. And a lot of people think it's grief from like the loss of my marriage, loss of the farm, but actually it was
Yeah.
the loss of myself. I
Mm.
was grieving
Mm.
the past version of me that I
Mm.
was leaving behind. And I knew I had to leave her behind, but I also had so much like connection and attachment because she
Yeah.
fought very hard to get me to where I was at that moment, the
Mm.
surviving and what it took for her to survive. So a lot of people don't think about the grief of the past versions of us and having
Yeah.
to let that go and move
Yeah.
into your authentic self.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about awakening, when individuals are going through an awakening, what type of experiences do they experience? Because many of us have, and sometimes it can be confusing. I'll give a short example, and it's one of the chapters in my book, and I call it an out of body experience. And something happened to me in an airport one day, and what I how I reacted to the situation was not of me. It's not my normal character. But yet, when I did it and I sat back down, I heard something say, if you would just get out of your way, I could do so much. And when I say out of your way, embarrassment, procrastination, the self-imposed barriers, I can't do that, lack of confidence. And I was so messed up. I was like,
Yeah.
what is wrong? What is going on? And that had a lot to do with me writing my book. So what are some of the experiences, or how do people feel when they go through that? Those types of, I'm calling that one an awakening for me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great story. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think there's a wide array of
Okay.
experiences that people have. The ones that I hear the most commonly is, we like to call it like identity crises, right? It is
Oh,
really
okay.
like someone all of a sudden will start to do something that is completely opposite of what they are
That's not
normally.
midlife, right? Is that identity
Right.
and
Well,
midlife are different?
even the same thing, even
Okay.
midlife. That's
Okay.
that's still part of the awakening, because you start to
Okay.
realize, because you're going back into like the authentic person, you know. So I mean, if you go and buy a sports car and leave your family, you know, that could be what we would call a midlife crisis. But if you start taking up new hobbies, deciding that you need to do XYZ, that is often because your soul is saying, hey, we're ready to come back to who we truly are. We sacrifice our dreams along the way, and often that comes back and hits
Yeah.
you like a ton of bricks. And so
Yeah.
then you go and start to explore those parts of you. So yeah, like breaking down the identity. Often people will have really bad panic attacks, and that is from the quantum field coming down, because I always say, I'm like, anxiety is a warning system in the physical body. To kind of explain a short version of what I talk about with energy
Sure.
systems is, your physical body is the result of your quantum field. So when there is misalignment within your 7 subtle layers, your physical body will actually start to hold that energy. So this is where people get sick, chronic illness,
Yeah.
because your body is now a container for all of that energy from your subtle body, your emotional body, your mental body, your astral body. And so that trickles down. The best visual I can give people is like a Russian nesting doll, you know, where it's a doll within the doll, within the doll, within the doll. You
Yeah.
are the little physical body, the 3D version inside, and those layers are stacking on top of you. And when there's misalignment in those, it trickles down into the physical. So panic or anxiety is
Mm-hmm.
a warning system that something's out of alignment in those subtle fields. So
Mm.
I always tell people, like, where does the anxiety hit you? Because we all kind of feel it in the chest, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I start going backwards in someone's story in history, they've suffered a great loss somewhere, grief, betrayal, because that's your heart chakra. So
Mm.
anxiety hits you in the heart chakra and it makes you feel like panic. So now let's look at what was the grief. What have we
Right.
not let go of, right? And what have we held on to? And a lot of people, and I would say 99% of the people that come see me, um, their biggest hurdle and what they don't want to let go of is that trauma. You think you do, right? Like, I want to be better. I want to feel better. But
Mm-hmm.
you have created an identity built on that trauma, and it has become a part of who you are. So there's fear of letting it go and putting it down, because
Mm-hmm.
who am I without it? I've carried it for so long. And so when I start breaking out the roots of what is causing someone to hold on to that, it's often because they're scared of who they're going to be without it, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's fear that usually is
Mhm.
fear is a big one that comes in awakening. We start to, you know, really look at everything, and I can't keep being this version of me, but I'm afraid of who I have to become to be authentic to myself. Who am I going to lose? What connections am I going to lose? Am I going to, you know, lose this job? Am I going to, you know, lose my friends? And so we
Mhm.
continue to live this life until you just can't anymore, because at a certain point, you
Mm.
know, the divine will step in and be like, you can't live like this anymore. And this is why a lot of people get chronic illness, because they're
Mm.
living out of their authentic nature. And
Mm.
so that's where we start to break that apart. And that's what when you were talking about quantum healing hypnosis technique,
Yeah.
that's a great one for breaking that barrier, because we go into the subconscious mind and we finally heal what's been fueling all of these patterns within you, and
Mhm.
giving it love, compassion, and finally releasing that. Um,
Mhm.
and once you bring something to the consciousness and it's seen, it can't be unseen. You know, anytime you have something that you see about something or someone, you know, once you identify it, you can't
Mhm.
unsee it, right? So that's
Mm.
what the subconscious is doing. We want to bring all that forward so that we can look at it and let it go and release it with compassion and love, so that you can move forward from this person
Mhm.
that you're trying to be for everyone else, and be
Mhm.
authentic to yourself.
Right. So, in other words, um, I always talk about um, individuals living their best life on their terms, and what
Mm,
that means is live in a way that maximizes your happiness, your authenticity, your fullness. without negating the values that you have. And there are individuals that, like you've indicated, they have a dream. There's something like in the beginning, I'm like, it's something, you know how you just know there's something else you should be doing. And for me, I get frustrated. Like, what is going on? And I know there are a lot of people that do. And you talked about the quantum theory and all of that. And a lot of my listeners aren't that familiar with that.
Yeah.
And then some of them get to a point where, like for me, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So what do I
Yeah.
do? Right?
Yep.
So explain to my listeners how Brheanna Myers break those blocks. I mean, what for people that really like want to do it, like what are some of the practices, the usable practice to awaken one's own potential? Explain those.
Yeah. Yeah. So a big one first is I always tell people, you tell yourself a story. What's that story? What are you telling yourself? So get real authentic with the story that you've been telling versus a story someone told you about you, because that is a blurry line until we start to actually focus energy and thought into it. So I tell journaling is really good. Even I would urge people to write we all do pros and cons lists. So doing one side where it's the pro, one side that's the con, and
Back.
right, was
And
this
Brheanna, I know
mine?
you're coming back.
Oh,
We both froze
yeah.
for a minute. Okay, we're
Oh,
back.
no problem.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Where did I leave off? Oh, the usable
About the
tools. Yes.
journaling.
Yep. So journaling. So I always tell people, like, start a pros and cons list, but start it as, is this mine or is this someone else's? Right. And start looking at things either you love about yourself or that you don't like about yourself, or a habit or a pattern that keeps coming forward, and put it in a list. What is mine and what is someone else's I'm carrying that I shouldn't be carrying anymore? I tell people, I'm like, our life, especially as women, we have this really nasty habit of carrying everyone else's weight,
Yeah.
and I kind of explain it to people in the way of, like, if you go to a gym and you pick up someone's 1 pound weight and they're like, oh, thanks, and you're carrying that, it's no big deal, right? It's 1 pound, it's not a big deal. But you do that over a lifetime. Eventually you've got these arms of 1 pound weights and you cannot hold on anymore. Let it go. Drop it. And that's why I encourage a lot of people to do, is like, what weight are you carrying that's not yours? What's your parents? What's your siblings? What's your boyfriends? What's your husbands? Because that's what weighs us down as women the most, because we have so many expectations, not only of ourselves, but of each other, and of how, as a collective of divine feminines, we are supposed to interact with each other. So there's so much jealousy. Are you really jealous? No, you're not. You're feeling insecure. So you start looking at those, what is actually what the core problem, because we can all go back to ourselves. And I always tell people, like, everything is within you. If you feel like you have an anger issue, okay, so what is creating the anger? Not the situation that just happened. Maybe you just yelled at your kid because whatever, but why are you projecting anger out of your field? Because your body is trying to get it out. That's why we have overactive emotions, because it's sitting entrapped in the field. So we need to release that out of the field, release it out of the heart. For a good one, since I know your primary listeners are women, I can kind of explain, because you said a lot of people don't understand quantum energy and how it affects the body. So a simple one is the solar plexus chakra. I think everyone knows where that is. It's right here below your chest. It is the seat of your self-worth, your willpower, and your expectations. And so that all sits in that solar plexus chakra. And for women particularly, we really struggle in these areas of our energy field because of those expectations and, what everybody thinks we need to be doing, what we think we need to be doing, right? So when you don't work with those energies, like self-worth is a big one for the solar plexus, that energy shoots through your system. So it comes from the root up to the crown, so the base of your spine to your crown, and it comes in a bubble. This is why people say, I don't like that person in my bubble. Your bubble is real. It is an etheric field. It's a 6-foot bubble, and it connects back to the Earth star, and then it comes back up. Well, when there's a blockage in that solar plexus chakra, like self-worth, identity, all those things, eventually it's going to bounce in between the fields. It's going to come in and out. This is why when we have a lot of unaddressed trauma, when the panic sets in, it feels like the walls are closing in on you, because it is. All those emotions, all that energy of your emotions are trapped in that etheric field, and it's closing in on you. So you're actually feeling a physical sensation that's real. Now, with the solar plexus chakra, if you don't work with those emotions, release them. Journaling is a great way to do that. Frequency is a really great way to work with that. I actually have a book on Amazon called Healing Frequencies Made Easy, and it shows all kinds of like what the symptoms are and how you can work with the frequencies to release that. And with that energy, if it doesn't get released, for example, the solar plexus, for women, it often lands on our left hip. And that's where the energy will get stored in the physical body. So think about women. How many women walk with a limp when they start to get older? Now, it's not because their hips are going bad. It's because they've been holding that energy and that emotion of not being worthy enough, not having met expectations, not having the willpower to make decisions for themselves. And it sits in that left hip and it creates pain. So that's what I talk about with the quantum field is so much bigger than your physical body, and it affects your physical body way more than you've been taught. And there was a design behind that. They don't want you to understand how to work with the energy, because once you know how to work with energy, you need a whole lot less doctors. So
Gotcha.
You can really work a lot with that.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. So those are some methodologies, I would say, or modalities on how to awaken your potential, how to get out of your way and do the things that you desire, or what your expectations are of yourself to do. Correct? Okay. Because I wanted to kind of go back to the Awaken Your Potential piece, which is our title.
Yeah. No, those are not modalities. Those are working with the energy field, and you're doing that every day. So that's what I'm saying. Like when you're active, you're either working against your field or you're working with your field. So affirmations, that's what I'm saying. Like affirmations, even the way you speak is affecting the field. It reverberates through your field, and it comes back and creates a break in the system. So this is why people get this concaving feeling, and why they can't awaken to their true potential, because they're carrying all that weight of other people, things in the field. So affirmations, journaling, working with frequencies. In fact, a really easy way is there's these boxes. This is a Schumann generator. It's a frequency generator. You can get these on my website, but you can tune these to different frequencies and actually recalibrate the frequencies that are having issues within your field, which is causing the emotional outbursts, the blockages. And then another big one that I work with people is the subconscious. And so that's why I was going into quantum healing hypnosis. So your subconscious holds every thought, everything that's ever happened in every lifetime you've ever lived. Your conscious mind is constantly filtering information to make sense and to program through faster, right? So a good example of this is if you've ever learned a new word, like a definition, and you learned that word, and then you hear it 10 times that next week, and you're like, I just heard this word for the first time. You didn't. Your conscious mind is constantly filtering information, but your subconscious is holding all of it. And that subconscious fuels the conscious thought. So working in the subconscious, bringing everything forward. I have a great example of this. Recently, my daughter said to me, she's like, something about mom having a cute tick. And I was like, I don't have a tick. She's like, yeah, you do. Every time you walk into a room, you click your tongue. And I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, yeah, you do. Well, now I can't unsee it. I totally do. So that's what you want to work with, is bringing what's not, what you're not aware of. And so why journaling is so important too, is because there's a scientific measurement to this. So as you write, let's start over. When you go through trauma or pain or heartbreak, your brain will actually shut off certain neurotransmitters in the brain as a self-preservation, right? As you write, that actually, hand to paper, not texting, writing, will actually turn those neurotransmitters back on and open up the lines again. There's a woman named Kathy O'Brien who she talks a lot about MK Ultra. She was one of the early victims of it, and she was taught how to reprogram herself. So that's like mind control or brainwashing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how they healed her was making her journal everything, because all the that's how they got her brainwashed, is they shut down certain neurotransmitters in her brain. And so writing is a huge healing tool. I always tell people, like, I know people are like, oh, journaling, my thoughts on paper. There's so much more to that than just writing out your thoughts, right? There's the release of the energy, and then you can also burn that too. I always tell people, like, if you don't want people to get their hands on it, maybe it's so deeply personal, burn it, transmute that energy into, and release it. But getting it out and on paper has more benefits than just, oh, I got my thoughts on paper.
Right. Wow. Brheanna, how could my listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can find all of my resources. My books are online on my website. I have a ton of podcasts on there that I've done. And that is lightandbreezycoaching.com.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can email me at Brheanna@lightandbreezycoaching.com as well, and talk to me directly.
Wow. Wow. What a rich conversation. I want to thank you. Of course, I could talk more about this more, but I can't. And so therefore my listeners have a way of contacting you. If they want to talk to you more, I think, did you have a call to action on your profile? I thought I saw. What was that?
Yeah. So I do what's called a signature healing session. It's a 90-minute session. And basically I look into your exact field and figure what's kind of working for you specifically. And then I build a healing modality based on that. I'm a Reiki master, but I'm also an Akasma master teacher. I'm a Maitreya light fusion therapist. So I have many, many tools, a vortex healer, many tools in my toolbox. So I am able to help people with their very specific needs, because not everyone is the same. I don't do the one size fits all kind of thing. But I also want to leave your listeners with one thing, that I think is really important, is that as we talk about these things, everyone kind of thinks, oh, I need to change this and I need to change that. The conversation isn't about the need to change anything. It's just releasing what has already been keeping you held back. And I like to tell people, I'm like, we are human beings, not human doing, right? Yeah. So just being who you are and your authenticity is really what's going to heal you at the most major core level. People pleasing. Stop saying yes. Say no. I actually enjoy saying no now. I work with my kids. It's really funny. I have a 12-year-old who is a people pleaser. And I'm like, let's practice. I'm like, can I have a piece of candy? And she starts to hand it to me. I'm like, no. So it's okay to say no. It's okay.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brheanna. And for my listeners out there, I know this podcast has really been a blessing. And some of it you may say, that's kind of over my head. Hey, if in fact something is what I call gnawing at you to hear a little more about it, you will. Don't resist it. Just 100%. Go for it, right?
Go with the flow.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, thank you, and all my listeners. Please share this with somebody in your circle, in your tribe, where you know this will be a blessing. And again, I always say, bye for now. God bless you. And Brheanna, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.